welcome to Get Your Bell Rung, a pro wrestling podcast. Guys, you know about this podcast. It's not always about professional wrestling, although we love talking about professional wrestling. Sometimes it's about more than that. And this is one of those episodes because tonight's about courage. Tonight is about a woman who stepped into an industry that was not built for her, refused to back down, and helped carve out a space for generations that followed. We talk about champions, we talk about eras, we talk about moments in the ring, but behind the spotlight, behind the character, behind the name Princess Victoria is Vicki Otis, a woman who traveled the roads when women wrestling did not receive the respect it does today, but it should have. A woman who fought for opportunity when it was not freely given. A woman whose story is bigger than the highlights. This will not be a typical interview. This is a conversation about sacrifice, about strength, about what the business gives and what it takes. Tonight, we go deeper. Tonight, just into the career, not into just the career, into the heart. Please welcome none other than a trailblazer, someone who I am so honored to have in this podcast, Princess Victoria. How are you?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
I am doing amazing. Thank you
Good.
so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, before we really get into a lot of stuff we'll be talking about, you have a book coming out. There's a book coming out called Fighting the Wrong Side of the Sun, Becoming Princess Victoria by Thomas Stradas. Is that correct?
Strasdas.
Now, guys, please write this down. Look at the below the screen. You'll see the author and the title of the book. Write it down. It's going to be coming out soon. We're going to talk about this book. And I guess the first question is, why now? What made you decide now is the time to tell my story?
Well, I have one book that I already am selling. It's Princess Victoria, A Tale of Tears, Triumphs, and Turnbuckles. I keep forgetting and that kind of scratches the surface. But the new book coming out is literally my life story from the beginning, the middle, wrestling, becoming homeless at one point in time, and having my life saved literally by professional wrestling. I had left home at 14. It was a leave or die situation. And anybody who's read my first book knows it was a rough road to hoe. But I left home at 14. I made a deal with my biological mother. She wrote the note. Because back then, parents could write a note, hand it to their kid, and you could hand it to the guy at the counter for a pack of cigarettes.
Yes, ma'am. 11 years old, get my own pack of cigarettes. I would write my own note and didn't care. Yep.
I'm guilty. And she wrote a note telling people I was 16. She couldn't find my birth certificate. And I went through, you got to go through the health courses and all that. And I became a waitress in Portland, Oregon when I left home. And I started going to the matches. And this spring, the first one, I just sat there, mesmerized, because the way I really got into professional wrestling was Sunday through to Saturday. When I was at my grandparents' house, we had old school home dinner at the table, discussing the day's events, all of that. But on Saturdays, we ate in the living room. Granddad was in the recliner. I had my elbows propped on his knees like this. I was sitting cross-legged on the floor, and we never missed a wrestling match.
Right.
Well, they took me to Portland, and we were at, I believe it was one of my grandfather's cousin's house. And it was all adult, and their son, who was 19 or 20, said, "Come on, let's get out of here." And he took me to my first live match. Now, back then, roller derby and wrestling, they were brothers.
Yes, ma'am.
I sat there, and it was the first time I'd seen a roller derby. And then the wrestling matches came on. And I saw Jimmy Snuka get on that top row and spread his arms like a bat. And he jumped almost the width of the ring. And I just, boom, I still have the 8x10
Wow.
that Jimmy autographed for me when I was 9 years old. And anyway, I'm in Portland. I get in a fight with the district manager. I ain't even gonna go into it. It's not worth it. But anyway, I told him I did a Johnny Paycheck on him. I told him where he could shove this job. Right. And I went to the matches, which I'd been going to, and I always got general admission. It was $5, and I put my money on the counter, and Sherri, Sandy Barr's wife, was collecting money, and Sandy came up behind her, said something to her, and she handed me my ticket, and I looked at it. It was a front row ticket. I said, "No, I didn't pay for this. I got general." And Sandy shut me up, which he's the only one who's ever been able to do that. And he said, "No, this is your seat from here on, and here's your $5 back." Then I got to know Sandy and Sherri and Buddy Rose, Rip Oliver,
Wow.
Dutch Savage, Stan Stasiak, Roddy Piper, Luke and Butch, the sheep herders.
Mhm.
And one day Sandy came up to me. I looked at him. I said, "I need a job." Well, when I went to the matches, I dressed to the nines.
Mhm.
I mean, you didn't go to the matches and not dress. And I was on the front row, and I think ringside, we call them ringside Rosies.
Mhm.
The old woman with the cane who
Right.
smacks. Right. I believe I was sitting right beside her, right dead center, and I didn't realize that I was dead center on the camera.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, all these wrestlers started, when they got thrown out of the ring, they'd land at my feet. But anyway, I was working for Sandy, and I came in when I quit my job, and I told him, I said, "I need a job." And he looked at me, he said, "All right, grab a broom." Now I'm in a yellow chiffon Chinese collar dress.
Right.
And high heels. And I said, "Well, I can't do it tonight, but, he said, "I'll see you tomorrow morning. Be here at 7:00. Well, from then on, I found out that if you work for Sandy Barr, you do not sleep from Friday night to Monday afternoon.
Right.
On Friday night, we set up the arena for his flea market that he had Saturdays and Sundays. And then Saturday afternoon, when the flea market was done, we had to break down that setup. And we're not talking about a small area. This was a large area. And we broke down the tables, set up the ring. Then Sunday night, we went to dinner. Everybody went to dinner. And then we went to the print shop, where I learned how to do darkroom work on photographs. And I found out what those little tiny knives were for. You've seen them, the little tiny knives. Right. And one day while I'm working for Sandy comes up to me. He said, "Look," he says, "I own a wrestling school, right?" I said, no. And he kind of looked at me and he said, look, he said, I've got this girl who wants to learn to wrestle, but I can't. Hi, Lori. How are you?
Granny Hawkster, you know what? Every time she
Uh,
watches my podcast, my head gets this big because it's like, one of the number one fans. She's been on the podcast before. Such an awesome, awesome lady.
Beautiful lady.
Yes.
Beautiful soul. And anyway, Sandy got me down there. And I was a body, basically. I wasn't there to train for wrestling because I never even thought about becoming a female wrestler. Didn't actually know they existed. And I started noticing within about a week this girl didn't show up one day. One day led into the next day to the next day to the next day. And I'm leaning in the corner one night and I'm sitting there thinking, wait, whoa, wait a minute. Sandy brought me on board to wrestle with this girl because she couldn't wrestle with the guys, yet she's not showing up and I'm wrestling with the guys. Well, by that time, I was hooked. So basically, Sandy tricked me into becoming a professional wrestler.
Now, I want to ask you, look, I know, and I know you know this as well. A lot of these people who interview, legends like yourself, they claim to be historians and stuff like that. I'm not. I'm just a fan, right? There's a lot of things I know about professional wrestling. There's a lot of things I don't know. But one of the things I don't think I'm very clear about is you're talking about wrestling in Portland, the West Coast. I don't know if I'm very knowledgeable about the stars in that area back then. Back when you were attending, who are the ones that you really idolized?
Everybody. I mean, I can't just pick one,
right?
Because we're talking the Butch and Luke, the sheep herders. We're talking, Stan Stasiak, Dutch Savage, Roddy Piper, Buddy Rose.
I love Buddy Rose.
Oh Lord, De Beers.
Oh, yeah,
Ed Wiskowski.
Yep.
Ed Wiskowski.
Yep.
Vicki Martel. Roddy Piper. Oh Lord, there were so many. I came up with the cream of the crop.
Right.
And I got so blessed that right as this was coming together and there was a big boom. I don't know if you've heard about the Buddy Rose Roddy Piper feud.
I did. Yes, ma'am. Because I was such a huge fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when I came up in it.
Right.
And Sandy used to have, when I finally settled down to my fate, knowing I was becoming a professional wrestler, he started bringing in one of the boys.
Mm.
And he'd bring in a different person once a week. And his reasoning is I don't care if you're trained exactly the same by the same person at the same time, you're still got a different style.
Right.
And he wanted us to be ready to work with whoever we could. And that was that. And then Velvet showed up.
Mm.
And one day, Sandy told me, I was at the arena. It was a Saturday night, getting ready to set up for the flea market. And Sandy told me, he said, I want you to go to the house, which my house, I was living in a wino motel where you showered with a knife down the hall because the lock didn't work well. And he said, I want you to have everything you own boxed up. I want you downstairs. And I looked at him, I said, why? He says, I'm tired of you taking the blasted bus. And he didn't say blasted. The blasted bus and coming late.
Mm.
He said, I want you here when you need to be here. And I didn't know Velvet was staying with Sandy at that time. Well, Velvet and I ended up sharing a room.
Mm.
And when I'm talking about Sandy trained us twice a day.
Wow.
2 to 3 hours. On top of that, we did cardio in the morning before we went to the training.
Wow.
And there were, when I first got there, there were trash cans, one on each side of the ring. And it wasn't if you were going to throw up,
When?
it was when, which garbage can, and are you actually going to make the garbage can?
Right.
To give you an example, Terry Allen, Magnum TA, was
Who I've had on the
training.
podcast. Great guy.
Yes. Oh,
Great.
one, if not my best friend.
Yeah, I love him.
I
Matter
mean,
of fact, when I first started this podcast, Princess, I'm a nobody. I mean, I'm no one. None of these people heard from me. And the very first two people who didn't say, "Let me think about it," it was an absolute yes, which shows you the heart that they have and how much they love their fans. Was Magnum TA and Baby Doll, who's coming back on the podcast here in about a week or so. I
yep.
mean, just do you agree with this? The hearts of professional wrestlers back then, and I mean no disrespect to today's athletes, but they were just different, just different.
We were a family. That's
Yeah.
what they're missing today. And just like we're a basically dysfunctional family, but we're a family. You could get, say I got mad at Dutch Savage and I wasn't talking to him. But if he called me up at 3 o'clock in the morning saying I'm broke down on such and such a highway at mile mark or whatever, you got up, you got in your car, and you went to get him. That had nothing to do with what was going on between him and I, and it wasn't mentioned. I've had issues with one lady in wrestling, and I'm not going to mention her name. And I was set to wrestle her in about 2 weeks. Well, when I walked in the ring, I figured it was on.
Right.
Very, very professional. Our disagreement outside the ring never made it into the ring. When you're in that ring, that's business.
Right.
And we took care of each other. I'm like Samsonite, and I used to travel with the heels because
I
that's
love the
just,
heels too.
yes. Then I don't have to explain.
Yeah.
But when it came to getting to the arena, this was in the old days. They stop about 2 blocks from the arena, and everybody had a car with a big trunk. Like a Lincoln Continental or Cadillac. And I'd crawl in the trunk. I'd be holding the trunk down. When they backed into the bushes, I let the trunk up and got out, faded into the bushes, waited for them to go park, then I walked into the arena. So it's a wonder, Samsonite owes me some money.
Let's talk about the book. And no, honestly, it doesn't matter if the next question, it doesn't matter if this new book coming out or the book you've already wrote. What I want to know is, look, I get going through some emotional times. I was been homeless. To this day, it's tough for me to talk about that part of our life because of the loss of my father. When you were writing this book, talk to me about the chapter that was most emotionally difficult for you to write because of you moved on, you're doing great now, but it's still hard to think or talk about.
It's not so hard to talk about it. It's emotional to talk about it because my childhood was not a bed of roses. I was sexually abused by my stepfather. My mother wouldn't believe me. My biological mother wouldn't believe me. He beat us, and when I say beat us, there was one day I went to school with 2 black eyes. One of my brothers, he had I'll call him Freckle Face because he had these freckles on his face and he was a little bit overweight. Well, every time he'd walk by Bill would back fist him in the stomach. And one day I distinctly remember Bill coming home and Doug had, we didn't get food stamps at that time. You got what they call commodities. And we weren't allowed to drink the whole milk. We were designated the dry milk.
Wow.
And Bill came in and my freckle-faced brother had a milk mustache.
Right.
And he picked my brother up by the throat, with like this, up against the wall, and he come back all the way from left, right field, and he punched him in the stomach so hard that my brother threw up. And I can't tell you how many times after telling my biological mother 4 times what he was doing, and she would browbeat the boys into backing up and saying, no, you're right, it didn't happen. A good friend, Don Maddox, Sylvia and I were in the car. My bio mom, we were in the car, and this house that we lived in had a crystal, lead crystal front door. And when you looked at it, you looked at their bedroom door. And here comes my brother. And he was bleeding profusely from his butt. And when Sylvia saw that, she couldn't deny it anymore.
Right.
It was shoved down her throat then. Sorry. And this is the part that's really hard to talk about, is I know that if that had been my child, that man wouldn't have made it to prison.
Right.
There wouldn't have been enough of him to do a DNA test. This woman, instead of calling the police, moves Bill upstairs into my bedroom and has us 3 kids sleeping with her downstairs. And Don Maddox came by with Dolly one day. And he told Dolly, he said, why don't you go make a pot of coffee? You and Sylvia sit down, have a cup of coffee. And I'll take Vickie to the grocery store. We'll pick up some groceries and we'll be back. And I got in the car with Don. And Don was with a white beard and white hair. He was a great Santa Claus. And we hadn't got 2 blocks from the house, and he pulled over. He said, all right, what's going on in this house? And I said nothing. And for the first time, I heard Don Maddox cuss. He said, bullshit. What's going on in this house? Well, I'd already told people so many times, and I'd gotten beat for telling people so many times, that of course I denied it. By that time, you learn to keep your mouth shut.
Right.
But when Don said that, it was like Niagara Falls released. And I told him everything that had happened in our very young lives. Don turns the car around, goes back to the house, walks in the door, stands in front of Sylvia. He says, you got 2 choices, lady. You can either go to the police station with us and turn him in, or you can go to prison with him. Your choice. And Don was an ex-police officer, and so was his father. And I never saw Bill again.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the hard ones. That's the one that gets me is instead of sending this man at the very least calling the police, she was acting like a scorned lover.
Right.
And it just, like I said, and then after Bill went to prison and she was there with the kids, with all the kids, she decided it was her turn to become the abuser. Physically, punching and all that. And the day I left home for good, I was 14. I was sleeping on her couch. She was charging me $25 a week to sleep on her couch and babysit the kids. And she came in drunk. And I woke up to her punching me. And I get up and I'm trying to, block her because that was something you didn't, that's your mother. You don't hit them. Well,
Right.
finally, I got her what Sandy calls now the mama hold. Is if you put your finger right here on your little pinky on top of the knuckle and then your thumb under there and you push, very few people can stand it.
Right.
And that's what I had to do in order to get her to stop. I said, give me 15 minutes. I'll be out of here. You won't ever have to worry about me again. And that's when I left.
In your first 14 years, you've been through experience, been through more drama than a lot of people have ever been through their entire lives. Now, they say that talking through things helps with stuff like that. And it's been a long time, but that's still trauma that sticks with you forever, right? When you were writing either of your books that you were writing, did you feel like writing this helped you change within your journey and help you never get over anything like this, but help you move on even further in life than even before?
When I was, I started my first book out, A Tale of Tears, Triumphs, and Turnbuckles. I started it out as a book before I ever met John Cosper, who was my partner and did very well in writing my first book. Writing that first 70 pages, it was like a trauma dump. And I can tell you this, I sat my husband down, Jack Coptis, who unfortunately passed away in 2008.
Sorry.
And he was, I put him in front of it to read it, and he got through about 15 pages, and he turned around with tears in his eyes. He said, Vic, I can't finish this. But I felt the world needed to know, and I've actually had it happen a couple of times where people have read my book, have been through the same situations that I was through as a child, and they literally had the gun in their mouth. And they let me know that after they read my book, that it stopped them from committing suicide.
Wow.
And that's why I wrote it. And it doesn't matter if it's 1 or 1,000,001. If it saves one person from killing themselves, knowing where I came from and where I ended up, if that stops them, I've done my job.
When you began this journey to write your books, to have your books wrote about yourself, was this more about setting the record straight or preserving your legacy? And by the time this was finished, was your reasoning for starting it completely different?
The first book, it did exactly what I wanted it to do. The second book, Fighting the Wrong Side of the Sun, That is a conglomeration of childhood wrestling, after wrestling, post wrestling and pre wrestling and wrestling. And there's a lot of road stories in this one from my good friends in the business. And Tom Strasdis, he's let me read the first 11 chapters, which was, I used to read, like I read Insomniac by Stephen King, 700 pages. I read it in 2 sittings.
Wow.
And I speed read, you cut out the and, there, the, and so far when I was reading it, it made me feel like a third party watching somebody else's life, because Tom has found out things about me and my family that I didn't even know.
Right.
He actually, now I never met my real biological father, but he found a picture of my biological father, and I have a scar right here in my eyebrow, or I thought it was a scar. When he showed me the picture of my biological father, he has the same mark. It's not a scar, it's a birthmark. And I look just like him. I look, if you extended his hair, I look just like him. And we went through this. And some of the things I found out about some of my family, some of it's not surprising, but some of it is. I asked him one day, I said, when are you going to tell me I'm related to Bonnie and Clyde? The only person that Tom has written about that's my family that does not have a criminal record is my grandmother. And it was, every time he'd come up with one of these sheets, criminal sheets, I'm going, good Lord.
When people read the book, when they read that final page and then they close that book, what is the one thing that you hope stays with them?
That there is always light at the end of the tunnel. I know it's rough right now. It's going to be rough today. It may be rough tomorrow. It may be rough for the next month. But sooner or later, look at me. Look at where I have been, where I came from, and where I am. What I became in wrestling. Don't give up.
Right.
And a lot of people think suicide is a selfish act. It's not. It's being tired. It's being emotionally exhausted. I can remember one time that I was sitting on my floor and I literally had a gun in my mouth and I was crying because I was so tired, just tired of fighting. And there's a voice I've heard 3 times in my life, and I haven't figured out who it is, but it's a male, it's deep, and it's sarcastic. 3 times I heard it. This was one of the times. And, the tears are running down the barrel of the gun, and I hear this voice say, so you're going to let Margie and John raise John? Margie is was my mother-in-law, and John was my ex-husband. And it was like, I laid down the gun. I looked up. I said, you won't even let me commit suicide. Are you kidding me?
Somebody has to get enough for you. You know, one thing that and what you're saying is exactly right. One thing I learned when I was in college, I took psychology and criminal justice. One of the first things they taught you in psychology is, you know, when it comes to suicide, the person who is at that point doesn't really want to die. What's happening is they don't know how else to get rid of that feeling.
Yes. Yes. Totally agree. Been there.
Yep, absolutely.
You're just personally, I was just so tired. I had fought my whole life trying to move forward. And yes, I moved forward, but it wasn't an easy road.
Right.
And I just want people to know, you know, yeah, it was really bad, but look where I ended up. You know, and then I start thinking about it in this perspective is, my God, what is my son going to think when he grows up?
Mm-hmm.
What's this going to do to my grandmother and my grandfather? You know, my brothers, my sisters. And that was part of what saved me. You know, that it just, like I said, people get to that point, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to stop the pain anymore. And it's not that they, like you said, it's not that they don't want to be here. They want to be out of pain.
Yep. Yep. You know, Princess Victoria, successful professional wrestler. You held the very first tag team titles back when. But what I want to know is, who is Vicki Otis when nobody's watching?
You know, that's a question. That is a hell of a question. Nobody has ever asked me that. I'm I'm a mother. I'm a friend. I'm a gardener. You know, I still love wrestling. I'm just I'm just Vicki. You know, without the fans, Princess Victoria would have never been. But I can relax now. It's been a long time. My husband died in my arms in 2008, and I had a severe case of PTSD. Well, I still have it. It's just under control. Um, Due to my childhood. And Jack, my second husband, my husband, the love of my life, my soulmate, the little brother I couldn't kill. If he wasn't pissing me off, he was holding me when I cried or making me laugh. He brought me through. I always said, you know, I always told people that, oh, I've got that under control. It's no problem. Well, then I started having flashbacks. And I mean, I'm walking awake having flashbacks of what had happened to me as a child. And one day Jack came in the house and he said, sit down, we need to talk. And he was very serious. And he told me, he said, Vicki, the only person I love more than you is my daughter. He said, but if you don't get some help, I have to leave.
Hmm.
Well, the next day I was on the phone. I was on the phone, and I mean, I called for 8 hours. I was at my thrift store that I had, and I was on the phone getting referrals. I found a counselor, and she was female. And I did it on purpose because, you know, us girls are going to stick together, right?
Right.
Well, I went to the first meeting with her, and she said, and by the way, if your husband wants to come and do, a duo counseling, I will do it for free.
Wow.
And Jack, when I set the appointment, it was like 3 or 4 days later, and I got ready to go. Went to get in the car. He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to my counseling appointment." He says, "You're not driving." And I looked at him, total question on my face. He said, "Vic, you don't know it, but when you leave that counseling session," he says, "you're going to be exhausted, and I don't want you driving a car." So he drove me, and he's outside waiting on me. And I came out. We got in the truck, started to pull out. He said, "Well, how'd this session go?" I said, "Fine." And Amy said that if you want to join in, that you're welcome to. And he said, "When?" I said, "Next week if you want to." He turned a Yui and went back. He said, "You go
Wow.
tell him I'll be there next week." Well, like I said, I thought, us girls got to stick together. At the end of our first meeting, she had us together, then us separately, then us together again. And at the final one, she looked at Jack and she says, "You pretty much got your act together." And then she looked at me and says, "You got a lot of work to do."
Wow.
And I went, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah, I get what you're saying about the relationship that you had with your husband. My wife and I, something we always say, first and last love, best friend, soulmate. And I'm saying there's nothing I wouldn't do for my wife. That's important when you're lucky to have that connection. It's
Yeah.
so important to maintain that. Now, I have a question about professional wrestling because you talked about what professional wrestling did for you. I want to know, what did professional wrestling take from you? Now, I don't mean toxic or bad stuff, but to be successful like you were, there's sacrifices that you have to make, right?
My
How did
body.
you how did
My
you
body.
balance? How did you make that balance between what it was given you and taken away from you?
It's a wrestling code. You know, I've been in the ring with an ankle that was this big because I had twisted my ankle. I wrestled with a broken collarbone. Um, I broke my neck in the ring. That was my last match. I broke my neck in the ring, and to me, I sacrificed my body, which that's everybody wants to. Oh, wrestling's fake. All right, come on, come on. I'm I'm just gonna show you how to do a few moves. Come on, tell me how fake this is, and I'll slap an you know front forearm on them. Put your hand right here and push, and you got this under your arm, and you're put. They ain't gonna be standing very long,
Right.
and that's what it takes. It takes your body.
Yes.
Sometimes, unfortunately, like Billy Jack Haynes,
Hmm.
who's he's in his what 80s,
Yep. He's going
and
through it right now.
oh yeah, yeah. It took his mentality. It took his brain.
Right.
Now, a lot of that had to do with the drugs he was doing too,
Hmm.
but he wouldn't have had access to as many drugs if he hadn't been in wrestling.
Right.
And he was one of the first that see when I a lot of people talk about the drugs that were in wrestling. The only thing I did was pain pills and pot. And yes, my God, shoot me, then hang me for stinking. I smoked pot in the 80s. um, and of course, we had our downtime. There was one time we went to seek an office house in Connecticut. I think it was Connecticut because we had the 2 days off in a row. I mean, that was like rubbing the bottle and Genie comes out.
Right.
You know, and that's part of the family thing we were talking about. You know, the guys, when I was on the road, if one of my brothers that I came up with wasn't there, they had already contacted somebody in the territory and told them, all right, Princess is coming. You make sure she gets the right motel, that she's got the right venue. You take care of her. And that went, I've heard a lot of women, and I do not doubt it at all, that have had issues.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've had 2, and one of them was taken care of by a very good friend of mine.
Right.
And the other one I ended up taking care of myself. I don't know how it happened, but somehow his boots got super glued to the ceiling at the gym we were wrestling.
That's just awesome. What is the biggest myth about your career that if you hear it, you're like, what in the F are these people talking about?
Oh, you just hit the money bag there. For some reason, just because, and it's not some reason, but because Moolah booked me,
Mm-hmm.
everybody thinks Moolah trained me.
Oh.
Moolah had nothing to do with my training.
Right.
Now she charged me $1,000 when I got there because I had to relearn how to wrestle because girls don't wrestle like guys. My big butt, they don't. But I was, young and naive. But that is one of my pet peeves, is somebody to tell me that Moolah trained me. Moolah had nothing to do with my training. My brothers up north in the Pacific Northwest and Sandy Bar, they had everything to do with my training. And I can never thank them enough. Buddy Rose, and I tell everybody this, Buddy Rose made me.
Wow.
Him and Piper had just done the Buddy Rose Piper feud, and Piper went to California, and Buddy took and made me his next victim. And they put me in an over-the-top battle royal. And the last 2 people in the ring were me and Buddy Rose.
Mm-hmm.
Rip Oliver snuck in. They grabbed me by each arm and they throw me, and we were in Salem at the theater, and it was a brick wall. And I hit the brick wall taller than I am, and when I sat up, I busted my head. And that play for, it seemed like it was 2 hours, but it was probably 5 seconds. That place, the whole entire crowd just went dead silent. And then they roared.
Wow.
Buddy Rose. He didn't have to do that. Those guys that I came up with, I had no problems with them. None. I was little sister, and you didn't mess with little sister. Unfortunately, a lot of my brothers are gone.
Mm-hmm.
And it hurts when I think about that.
Right.
I mean, there are so few that I wrestled with. Ed Moretti, Terry Adonis, Velvet McIntyre, they're still alive. Oh shoot. I can't remember his name, and I just looked at a picture I took of him Fidel Cortez,
Oh, yeah.
um, Rocky Delicero, the Grappler.
Mhm.
You know, I mean,
All legends.
they, yeah, but they all had say in what happened in
Right.
that ring. And they all stepped aside for me. And
Wow.
they didn't have to do that. I still got the picture. A fan took the picture in the crow's nest, and I'm in a lilac dress that has butterflies all over it. And I'm doing an interview with Frank Bonham. And I had high heels on too. And I'm doing a interview with Frank Bonham talking about the 8-man over the top battle royal that's going to happen, and I'm not a woman wrestler. I'm a wrestler, and I deserve to have my shot. Well, Buddy comes up and he pulls his, in the bedroom, in the kitchen, barefoot and pregnant line. And I kicked him right in a very private place. And one of the fans got a picture of my foot halfway up. And I've still got that picture. It's going to be in the book, the second book. I've still got that picture. And I can never thank Buddy Rose enough. Another one of my brothers who's gone. Sherri Martel. But I can never thank that crew that I came up with in Portland, and Ed Moretti, you name it. I can never thank them enough for because I came up the perfect time in wrestling, in my opinion.
Right.
We never we never walked into a half full house. We had people waiting outside trying to get in, and I was blessed to come up when I did with the people I came up with.
Right. By the time you became a professional wrestler, as we talked about at the beginning of this podcast, you had already been through so much. When you first got into the business, you're in the ring, you have all of these great people, helping you, stepping aside for you. Did it get to the point that you felt invincible? And if so, was there a point that someone had to step aside? You had to come to you and say, hey, you're amazing, but you're still human.
Actually, the night of the 8-man battle royal, Sandy kind of put me in my place, because like I said, I went over like a humongous helium balloon that night. I was instantaneously on the top. And I walked down into the dressing room, and I didn't smile till I got downstairs, and I started grinning ear to ear. And I went, Sandy, I'm over. And he looked at me, he said, yep, now the work begins. Anybody can get over. It's staying over.
Right.
That takes the work. And I kind of slumped. I went, oh God, I thought it was going to get easier from here. But he let me know right there that training wasn't over. Just because I was wrestling at night didn't mean I couldn't train in the morning before we left for the town.
Right.
Sandy kept my head on straight. I actually was one of the 2 first women to box in a tough guys fight.
Wow.
That was in Salem, Oregon, and it was a tough guys fight. Now, if you ever want to figure out how heavy at 8 ounces is, put that on your hands and try to punch with them for 3 minutes solid.
Right.
Boxers have my respect.
Yeah.
But the girl that I was boxing actually happened to be the girl that was supposed to have finished training. And she did one of these bulldog things where she dropped her head and she like this. Well, I just sidestepped her because she didn't watch where she was going. But then and in wrestling, you've got to be able to do this. You have to think on the second. And without even thinking, she was headed, her head was already out between the second and third, or between the second and first rope. And it was a concrete floor. And she was going to hit that concrete. And me being me, I hooked her around the waist and pulled her back. Well, we get down now. Now, this girl hasn't landed 3 good punches on me all 3 rounds. And it came up in a split decision, and she won. That's what I want. What? Right? And I think it was a couple of years later, Sandy walks up. I'm back in Portland working for Moolah. And Sandy says, "Oh, by the way, I probably should have told you this a couple years ago, but you actually won that boxing match. But I put in the fix and I didn't want you getting a big head."
Wow.
That was Sandy Barr. You know, he was an old school trainer.
Mm-hmm.
His job was to filter out the people who were training that didn't have their heart and soul invested in wrestling.
Right.
That was his job as a trainer. And a lot of trainers nowadays have forgotten that. And that's one of the things that I feel is not good for wrestling these days. Along with these kids, they're missing it. They're missing having the family that we were.
Right.
You know, and I feel sorry for them because I've got memories that'll take me to my grave.
Yeah.
If I live to be 150, I've got at least that many memories.
Right. Right.
You know.
Do you feel appreciated today?
Yes. And I was actually shocked when I finally let people know who I was, because I had quit watching wrestling in 87 because of what was going on with Moolah and the schoolgirl outfits and what was being done with the girls, you know, the bikini matches, the lingerie matches. That's not wrestling.
Right.
And I almost put my foot through the TV. And I had a 55-inch DLP at the time. That would have cost me some money.
Right.
And I quit watching it because the women were disgraced, you know. And I've even heard of one of them that walked to the ring in Kuwait, and she was crying all the way to the ring. And they kept talking about Triple H was going to be Santa Claus and the troops, and there was going to be this contest between 3 girls that whoever wins gets to be Santa's little helper.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's women, but it's wrestling, and I'm thinking wrestling contest,
Right.
2 girls, then 2 girls, then the win. And when they walked out, they had these cute little Santa coats on. I didn't notice they had high heels on. And when they got in the ring and they dropped their coats, they had 3 triangles and butt floss.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the night I quit watching wrestling.
Oh.
I don't blame the girls. They were doing what they had to do to stay in the business,
Right.
because, like, when Moolah was alive, she had the lock on women's wrestling. You know, I mean, it was either you do these things or you don't wrestle,
Right.
because now it was all New York.
Yep.
And I was so mad. And I never took it into account until I talked to one of the girls. And they told me that this one young lady was crying on her way to the ring because it was something she didn't want to do.
Right.
And I'm and that's gone away. I'm actually, since 1987, if WWE came on my TV, I changed the channel.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, now I'm watching it.
A lot's changed. That was probably
Yes.
the worst 20. That was probably the worst 20 plus years in professional wrestling for women, in my opinion.
Mine
I'm
too.
so glad that they are where they're at now
Yes.
with it.
Oh,
But
and I tell everybody, Rhea Shipley.
yeah, Rhea Ripley.
Rhea Ripley. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, dear. I love her.
Mhm.
I love her gimmick. I've never met her. I'm looking forward to meeting her. And what really, not only is her wrestling solid as a rock, but I was watching, I can't remember I think I was watching WWE, as a matter of fact. And they were going, Rhea and a couple of the guys were going down. I believe it was in Maryland, because you walk down up under the building, and that's how you got in. And Rhea's walking down, and you can hear this little girl, and she wants Rhea to autograph something. And the guards, of course, are holding the kid back, and Rhea goes, she holds up her hand, she says, no, 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 bring her to me, basically.
Right.
And she signed that little girl's autograph. Now, she made that little girl's dream.
Yep.
And she appreciates her fans. She's one of those who know, without the fans, I'm just Vicki Otis.
Right.
There's no Princess Victoria without the fans. And I believe Rhea holds that just by what I saw.
Right.
And some of the women's matches I've seen, they've went from all this show and tell to, they've got two pieces on, but everything's covered and it's not going to accidentally fall out.
Right.
And I am so glad the turn that they're taking with women's wrestling, because they've got a lot of talent up there right now.
Yeah. I agree. With everything that was happening to you as a child, before professional wrestling came into your life, did you have in mind of something else that you wanted to go into? Was there a goal, or was it, man, if it wasn't for professional wrestling, there's no telling where you would be at?
I'll tell you what, professional wrestling saved my life, because I was headed down a dark, dark road. If they hadn't scooped me up, if Sandy hadn't scooped me up when he did, I don't believe I'd be sitting here today.
Right.
I mean, and when I say dark road, I mean dark road. And like I said, if it hadn't been for me getting involved in wrestling, I don't think I'd be sitting here right now. It wasn't a goal at the time, but everything that happened to me, the universe had put certain people in my life that I needed them to be there, and it was taken care of.
Right.
You know, first it was Don Maddox to get rid of Bill.
Mhm.
Then it was Sandy Barr in wrestling. Then it was my second husband, Jack. You know, because I truly, truly believe I would not be here today if it hadn't been for those people that were placed.
Right.
You know, and I really didn't have. At one time, I wanted to be uh, a counselor
Okay.
for kids. This was just before I left home.
Mhm.
And my counselor, I had the one thing that Sylvia did do is I was in counseling. And Ann Guile. Now we're talking, I'll be 65 this year. I was 14,
Mhm.
51 years ago. And I still remember that lady's name. And she looked at me. We were in a session, and it was a particularly hard one. And she looked at me. She's at the end of the session. She looked at me and she says, "Vickie, you've got two choices. You can take the road to the left, and you can wallow in self pity, about, oh God, look at this happen to me." She said, "Or you can take the road to the right and realize that most kids who have been where you were at are buried in a field somewhere and nobody knows where they are."
Right.
And that it was kind of like the things that your grandmother beat into you,
Mhm.
that you don't use them
Right.
until one day when you're a grown up and you go, "Oh, that's why she said do it this way."
Right. Right.
I didn't do it, there for a long time. I was wallowing in self-pity. And then I said to myself, they've taken, because at one point in time I couldn't remember anything about my life from 14 back.
Wow.
And that's when the flash, and I truly believe to this day that the reason I started having the flashbacks and my memory started coming back is because I felt safe for the first time in my life with Jack.
Right.
Um, but I didn't do what she wanted me to at first. And then wrestling came along. And there was one night Sylvia calls Elton Owens in Eugene. And Rip Oliver comes in and he said, "Vickie, you got a phone call. It's your mother." Well, my mind's going through the worst scenarios because she's calling me at the matches. And she told me that Bill, my stepfather, was coming to the matches and he wanted to see me. And
Mhm.
I hung up the phone. I hung up the phone. Well, see, at this time, I hadn't told any of the guys
Right.
about my childhood. Nobody knew. And I came into the dressing room, and I don't know what the look on my face was, but Rip Oliver, and I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. He walked up to me. He goes, "Princess, what's wrong?" I said, "Nothing." He said, "Bullshit. What's wrong?" And once again, and I told him what was. I gave him as short of a scenario as I could. He said, "Wait right here. I'll be back." Well, Velvet and I's single match went to a mixed tag match with managers and security on the floor. Otherwise, every
No.
wrestler in that uh, dressing room
Right.
was at
Wow.
that match. And Rip told me, he said, if you see him, he said, you point him out. He said, and then you need to turn your pretty little head because I don't want you to see what's going to happen.
Princess Victoria, we've been talking for about an hour now. Are you okay if we go a little bit longer? Because there's some still, you good? Okay.
Yeah. Let me get up and get some Tang.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh.
Guys, please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. Again, you get to hear stories by people like legends, like Princess Victoria, who, by the way, we'll talk about it, was actually WWE's very first inaugural tag team title, and we'll get there. The next question, before we get into your wrestling career with WWF, did you always have a fighting spirit, or because of everything that you've gone through, was it life that taught you how to fight?
Life. And the easiest way to put that forward is there was a young lady by the name of Elizabeth Chase who came to Moula's to train. And she was stretching all the girls. And Moula came and got me. And I had my coffee in my hand because I thought I had the day off.
Right.
I woke up to Bailey's Irish Cream and Kahlua. And I had this huge pink travel mug. And I'm walking in there with Moula, and she is fussing and cussing, talking about this girl who's hurting her girls and blah, 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 blah. As soon as we went through the door, her voice dropped low. Mm-hmm. And she said, watch. I said, okay. So I watched. The girl was doing Greco-Roman wrestling, mm-hmm. which I had already been trained in by Sandy Barr, because you had to learn to actually wrestle before you learned how to professional wrestle. Right. Wow. And Moula points. She said, can you take her? I said, yeah. I said, how do you want me to do it? You want me to do it street? You want me to do it boxing? Or you want me to do it wrestling? I don't care how you do it, just do it. And so I got up in the ring, and she made this mistake of trying to stretch me. Mm. And, most times you get a headlock, right arm. Well, she wasn't ready for me because I could use either arm, and I tucked her under my left arm, and I took a run and jump, and I made sure that her head was further down than it was supposed to be. Right. She walked out of there, and she had rug burn all but she started to behave after that. So I get my survival skills. They just came naturally to me. I mean, I had been fighting to stay alive since I was 4 years old. Right. And although there were several times that I tried to end myself, it never happened. And I kept saying, well, I'm not dead yet. There must be. And this was probably the beginning of the end of my self-pity. As I thought about it, I said, well, I tried to kill myself here so many times, and I'm still here. There must be some reason I'm here. Right. And that's when my attitude changed. I went from feeling, oh, poor, pitiful me, is to let's get around the next corner and see what we're going to find. You talked about Sandy Barr, and you talked about all the people that had your back and who stepped aside for you.
But you still, there must have been a point in your career that you still felt like that you had something to prove that you belonged there. Talk to me
I
about that period.
always, right up to the day I broke my neck.
Wow.
Um, every night that I walked to the ma- to the ring, I had butterflies. I was always, always nervous, and I was told by Sandy Barr, of course, the first time that you go to walk to that ring and you're not nervous, it's time to quit. And right up to my last match, I was nervous every match I was in when I first got there. Once we hooked up, then it was work. Then I had to do my business.
Right.
But walking out there, that heart was doing this. And I believe he's right. I never walked out to the ring without that nervous feeling. And another thing I was told, I don't care if there's 5 people or 5,000 people, you give the same show to those 5 people as you give to those 5,000 people. Make sure that that
Right.
they got their money's worth, that they're coming back next week. It didn't matter if it was 5, it'd be 10 the next week.
Right.
You know, so many things that Sandy taught me, not only physically wrestling, but the mental stuff. That's something else that got me fighting is I had so many people had my back, and it was like I said, the universe planted these different people. I mean, when I first went to Portland running away at 14, I had was working at Denny's restaurant, and I was sleeping in a park at that time. I didn't have
Mm.
anything until I got my first check, and my first check would not pay the rent, and it
Right.
was only $90 a month.
Wow.
But I've just always been that way. I've always been headstrong. My grandmother would say stubborn.
Yep.
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 I can't. Grandma didn't cuss much, but I'm the one she always called the little shit. Get in here, you little shit. So when I went on the road for wrestling, when I started going on the road, I called her up one day, and when she answered the phone, I said, "Hey, yo, bat," and she giggled like a schoolgirl. She knew exactly what it was for. Now
Well, to me, go
that's
ahead.
that's where I get most of who I am.
Your grandmother.
My grandmother and my grandfather, if it wasn't for them, I'm not sure. I mean, they gave me common sense, money sense, working. You don't live off of other people. You earn your way. And it came into play. It changed a lot.
Right. Wilson Beltonville says Ricky Romero used to say the same thing: 5 or 5,000, work hard.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Yeah, that does not surprise me in the least.
Talk to me about how did you end up with in New York WWF at the time, and also tell me the story about you being teamed up with your tag team partner, which led to you becoming the first Intro Women's Tag Team Champions.
Um, well, Velvet and I both. Sandy came to us one day, and we worked for Al Tomko at All Star Wrestling. We worked for Ed Moretti in Idaho. We worked for Don Owens, and we did that for, I believe, better than six. I know it's better than 6 months. And finally, Sandy came to us one day and he said, "Ladies, if you want to wrestle, if you want to continue wrestling, I can't. I've done everything I can do. I don't want to send you here, but this is where you have to go.
Right.
And Velvet got there, and I kind of took a detour. Um, Piper and I kind of had an off again, on again thing, and I stopped at the Days Inn in Charlotte and spent probably 2 weeks with him, and now this is funny. I heard that Moolah kept going around going, "Where's that effing Indian? Where's that effing Indian?" And Pipe did not want me to go. He did not want me to go work for Moolah. He said, "You can stay here till you get on your feet, till you get another job. Please don't go to Moolah's." Headstrong and stupid, I went to Moolah's. Unfortunately, I didn't do it like Sherri Martel did. When she finally got tired of Moolah, she talked to Buddy and the boys, and she became Sherri Martel, one of the best managers that there was. I put her right up there with Bobby Heenan.
Right.
Beautiful lady, beautiful soul. She was one of my friends. Right. Her and I used to, when she was at Moolah's, her and I used to go out on the dock, and we'd sit there and suntan, had our little portable radio, and we'd take a 6-pack of beer out there, and we'd put it on a rope and drop it down in the pond to keep it cold. Anyway, that's the excuse we used, was to keep it cold. We were actually just hiding it from Moolah. And one day Katie came out there. What was her ring name? She was a midget.
Oh.
Not Diamond Lil.
Yeah, you missed it. I'll find out. I can't think of her name either. From the 80s. I can't remember her name.
I can't either, and that's sad. She's still alive, by the way. She lives right out there by Sue Green and Rockin' Robin.
Right. Yeah, little the Diamond Lil was when it came up, who he said it wasn't her, but yeah. I can't remember her name.
I'll remember it at 3:00 in the morning and call you and tell you.
Yeah.
But anyway, me and Sherri are out there on the dock, and here comes Katie. So, "I know you got beer out here. Give me one." And we gave her a beer. Well, not taking into account her size and body mass, we gave her a second one.
Oh.
And she turned them up. She didn't do no playing.
Right.
And one beer, one swallow. And we gave her, of course, she wanted a second one, so we gave her a second one. Well, she lived with Moolah. And by the time she walks from the dock to Moolah's, she is shit-faced. And all of a sudden, you hear Moolah, and she's hollering, "Who gave you the damn beer?" Well, luckily, Katie didn't sell us out. But we also learned Katie can handle one beer, not two. But no, Sherri was the type of people that you could be walking through a snowstorm with her, And if you said you were cold, she'd take her coat off her back and put it on yours.
Wow. Wow.
Very beautiful lady, very beautiful heart. I'm sorry that she left this world so early.
Yeah, there was. I mean, she's one of those people that when she left us, I mean, huge hole,
Oh
in
yeah,
wrestling.
oh yeah. It that went home
Yeah.
to a lot of people. See, when I left Moolah's, I was not in contact with anybody.
Mhm.
I broke contact from 84 when I broke my neck, and Moolah sent me packing with $20 in my pocket, and she
Wow.
took all three of my yellow outfit, my white outfit, and the boots to match, and the brown outfit for back rent. And mm, 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 mm. And I left with $20 in my pocket. I had no idea where I was going to go. That's when I became homeless.
Right.
I was living in my Chevy Malibu
Wow.
station wagon with everything that I had. I left property with $20. And when she took my outfit, she says, "You need to go find a job because I'm not carrying you anymore."
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
And don't get me wrong. I'm one of those people who I can split Moolah, the wrestler,
I was
to
just about to ask
Lillian
you that.
Ellison, to
Right.
Lillian Ellison, the booker.
Right.
I don't like Lillian Ellison, the booker. She's a liar, she's a thief, and all of that. But I respect Moolah, the wrestler.
Right.
She came up, she paved the way for me.
Right.
If it wasn't for her and like Cora Combs, I wouldn't be here.
Mhm.
And Moo came up. She came up in a very, very hard time for women. I
Right.
mean, the women were getting shot and stabbed just like the guys.
Mhm.
And, but I still have to respect her as Moolah the wrestler.
Right. Talk to me about, again, those when you won those tag team titles. Talk to me about that feeling. And did you have that feeling at that moment that, wow, I thought I made it before, but now I've really made it?
Yes and no. Yes, I thought I really made it, but I don't think it was the belts really didn't have a lot to do with it. It was more being semi-main and main event
Mm-hmm.
is what was telling me I made it. Because they can put the belts on anybody. But when they keep you semi-main and main event, that's what says you've made it.
Right.
And I did semi-main event in the Madison Square Garden. So, and when Velvet and I walked out to that crowd, I was already nervous.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I mean, I was so nervous that I botched the first move.
Oh, wow.
And when I got in the ring with Velvet, you'll see me put my hand on her arm right by her elbow. And we kind of turn a half turn. And I said, "Velvet, look at all these blanking people." And that's when I walking out there, I wasn't nervous because you couldn't see just how many people there were.
Right.
But when you get out there and you're in Madison Square Garden and your semi-main event, there ain't nothing like it.
Now let me ask you this question. You're now in the big federation. You're semi-main event, like you said. I mean, you freaking Madison Square Garden, for the love of God, right?
Right.
But let me ask you this. You're also somewhere different, away from those that you talked about, family. You know, maybe some may be there, but a lot of those people you left because you're at this bigger federation.
Right.
Did you feel lonely during this time, or did you still feel like, no, I still have my family?
I was not lonely. I was covered. You know, like I said before, a lot of the women have talked about problems that they had. Well, I was in Louisiana, and I'm not going to mention the guy's name because he's grown up a lot since then.
Where I'm originally from, by the way.
Huh?
I'm originally from Louisiana. Grew up watching Mid-South Wrestling.
Yep. Bill Watts.
Bill Watts.
Loved the man. I
Got to
put
meet him
him
once as a kid.
as far as a promoter that takes care of his people.
Yeah.
Him and Don Owens are the top. But we were in this convention center thing, and it was literally a mouse maze to get to the ring. And Bill Watts told this gentleman that to take me out to the ring. When they called my name, we went walking and walking and walking and walking. Then they called my name a second time, and we're still walking. Then he steps to the right, and I figure, okay, here's where we go to the matches, and he drops his trunks right there. Yeah. And that's when Victoria comes out.
Right.
She's not a nice person. I don't even like Victoria. And I looked at this gentleman. He has become a gentleman. He's grown up. And I looked at him. I said, you know what? I might not beat your ass, but you're going to know I was there. And then they called my name for the third time. 3 times. You're fired. Wow. You know, you're fired. So we do the match. I go back to the dressing room, and Magnum TA, Terry Allen, happened to be there, and he walked into the bathroom where I was getting all my makeup off. And he looked at me, and he held his hands up like, you know, WTF.
Right.
And I told him what happened, and I could see him. I could see his eyes narrow. And funny thing, I think I was there for 2 or 3 weeks, and I never saw that guy again at any of the matches. Gee, imagine that.
Wow, that's awesome.
Well, there's very few places that I have went. Puerto Rico. I don't remember if there were. Well, no. Piper, Sika, and Offa were there. Flair was there. There were very few places that, if any, that I went that I didn't either know somebody or they knew somebody who knew me, who had talked to them. Like I said, I was very well taken care of by the boys and girls in this business. And a couple of things that happened didn't bother me. They were handled. You know, and I'm not one to go run into the promoter. That's just not my thing.
Right.
I handle my own business. It's not the promoter's job to handle my business. It's my job.
Right.
And I had plans on him. Believe me, I had plans on him. But fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, I didn't have the chance. But there, Matt Bourne was there, who I came up with. TA, Magnum TA, Terry Taylor
Mm-hmm.
was there. Um, let's see, was Manny there? No,
Fernandez.
Fernandez. Oh,
Yep.
I got a good one on him. Uh, love you, Manny. Uh, um, me and Wendy were riding with Manny. Well, in Texas, as you well know, there can be 400 miles where you don't see anything.
Yep.
And so, you're one of the boys, you got to pee. They shut the door, you go out behind, getting a little bit of grass and you do your thing. Well, the first time, Manny put his headlights on us, bright headlights.
Right.
Okay, it was cute the first time. Didn't bother me. He couldn't see anything that far away anyway. Not so cute the second time. The third time that he did it, I got a little aggravated. And one of the boys, I can't remember which one it was sitting in the back seat with Wendy. And I was in the front seat with Manny. And as soon as I got in the car, I took every joke that I knew, every ethnic joke that I knew, and turned them into Hispanic jokes. And I start telling Manny all these jokes, right? And one time he went to, he was going to pop me in the chest. And the wrestler in back grabbed his arm and said, "Nuh-uh, brother, you earned this." So we get to, I think it's Brownsville or Brown, right there on the border of Texas. And
Brownsville.
okay, we get there and I'm in my dressing room by myself. And here comes Manny with these two. They were not refrigerators. They were restaurant size refrigerators. I mean, big. And they were the EMTs for the matches.
Mm-hmm.
And Manny comes in front of him and he's doing the Manny Fernandez strut. He said, "All right, princess, go ahead and tell them one of your jokes." And I looked him right dead in the eye. I said, "Why do flies have wings?" And you could see their eyes narrow. And the voice, simultaneously, they go, "Why?" And I started grinning. I said, to beat him to the garbage can. I pointed at Manny. And he said, "Oh, for Christ's sakes, I give up." He said, I remind him of that every time I see him.
Talk to me about your last match.
It was a good match. It was me and Velvet, and I believe we were defending the titles at that time against Leilani Kai and Despina Montagas. And Despina had picked me up, and I think it was for, I can't remember what it was for, but from what I remember, she tripped and sat on my head. Total accident. Could have happened to anybody. I didn't know my neck was broke. I had no clue. The adrenaline rush was still in. So we get back to the dressing room and I sit there. I'm going to cool off. So I bend over to unlace my boots. And I got about here and I felt this horrendous pain. And like every wrestler in the world, oh God, which muscle have I pulled and how long is it going to take to heal? And so I sat there a little longer, and the last thing I remember is I was reaching for my boot to untie it. The next thing I remember, I'm on a gurney, and there's two EMTs. They're wheeling me out into the ambulance. Just a snap. I mean, and for almost 2 months, I had just snippets that I could remember. To this day, I can't remember it.
Wow.
And somehow and like I said, there were snippets. I was in the hospital, and Moolah came in, and the doctors told me if I didn't have surgery, I wouldn't be able to lift more than 20 pounds at one time again. Well, that really worked well, because I was putting washers and dryers in trucks.
Right.
In my thrift shop. I mean, it's easy. It's all leverage.
Right.
And the next thing I remember is I'm outside my home there behind Moolah's, and we're walking to the ring, and she says, try to take a bump, and I took a bump, and I screamed to high heaven. And then the next thing I hear is, you can't wrestle anymore. You owe me X amount of dollars. I'll take this outfit, and this outfit, and your boots, and you're paid up. But you need to find a job to pay the bills. Well, I wasn't going to stay after that.
Right.
You know, I mean, she broke my heart. She literally broke my heart, because I was spoiled. I had been taken care of in the business before I ever even started training for wrestling.
Right.
And then I meet the Black Widow. And I didn't watch wrestling. I mean, I couldn't. I was broke. You know, I met my ex-husband, and I was sleeping in my car at the time. And I had went into this bar because I was literally homeless. I was picking up bottles and cans to make money.
Wow.
And well, I know there's not ever been a part of my life when I haven't been working,
right,
doing something. I mean, I'm an author. I waited tables. I welded fuel and hydraulic tanks for the big tractors. You know, the ones that the wheels are taller than you are.
Yeah.
I welded those, and they had to be pressure tested.
Wow.
I mean, there's so many, and Sandy, you know, teaching me. The house that Sandy and Sherri were sharing at the time, I know how to lay tile. I know how to lay bricks. You know, there is so much that I had learned to do, that being without a job, that's not a concept. I mean, when they let me go at the tractor factory because they were closing it down, I made 3 stops and put in 3 applications before I even went home.
Wow.
You know?
Right.
So it is. I've always been that way. I get it from my grandmother, you know?
Right.
Gotta bless the old bat. I wish she was still around. Of course, she'd be 118.
Who did Vicki Otis become after professional wrestling?
I met my first husband, and we opened a thrift shop, and in Franklin, Virginia, and he had went there to do some. He was a pipe fitter, And he kept telling me every time we got to a town, oh, this job's going to last 2 or 3 years. We're going to be here for that long. 3 weeks later, I'm repacking the house. Well, this time I said, no, not happening. I'm done. I'm staying here. And I opened a thrift store, and it was called Used, Not Abused. And it was right, but there was this building with 3 different shops in it. There was my thrift shop, the hair shop for the ladies, and the laundromat. I mean, you can't do that on purpose.
Right.
But it just happened. And I became Mama Vickie. Because there were kids that one of the kids, oh God, I can't remember his name. God bless him, I can see him. He started coming in. And one day he asked me, he said, is there anything I can do to make some money? And, I had him sweeping the floor, doing things like that. And then we got close, me and this 13-year-old kid. And I always asked him, how are your grades? And he told me one day, all D's and F's. And I looked at him, I said, you're smarter than that. And I told him, for every A that you bring me, you got $10 credit in the store.
Wow.
And I did that with a lot of the kids. At my house where I was living, there was a trailer park right next door, and it was a rundown trailer park. So there were kids who were not been taken care of, unfortunately, typical trailer trash. And I can say that because I lived in a trailer. And starting on Friday nights, I'd start a fire. I'd go to work, we let it burn out Friday night, go to work Saturday, come home, start the fire Saturday night, and the kids, instead of going out and raising hell in Franklin, they were eating marshmallows beside my fire pit. So I was Mama Vickie, and I have become Mama Vickie and Aunt Vickie to some of the best people in the world. Wrestlers, gear makers, Saffron Gear. Guys, I'm putting in a plug. Tina Louise, Saffron Gear. If you want good, it's not good, it's fantastic. If you want fantastic gear, contact that woman. Tell her Princess Victoria sent you. But anyway, then after that, I got pregnant in 91. John was born March 1st of 92. So there was no longer any Vickie in my name. I was John's mom. Hey, John's mom, come here. By the time that John could speak, and I loved it. I had one guy come up to me and he handed me $1. I said, what's that for? He said, it's for the refrigerator in the back. I said, no, that said $100, not $1. He said, but John said I could have it for $1. And I did that for about 17 years. In between welding, I went to school for welding, welded for a while. This was after I opened my store. And I'd been there 11 years, and then crack got into the neighborhood, so I shut it down, became a welder. Then I met my husband, Jack, and we opened the store up again, and we were doing fantastic up until 911. Mm-hmm. And we had just started recovering from 911 when gas and oil went through the roof. And I ended up having to close it down. Yeah. So I went back to welding. There's not a place that I've ever left that I can't go back and
Right.
get a job.
This is my last question.
Okay.
And you don't have to, you know what? I'm not even, if you want to, answer this and involve professional wrestling, that's fine. But there's more to Vicki Otis than Princess Victoria, right? I
Oh
want
yeah.
to know what part of your legacy matters the most to you.
What my son thinks of me. What my son thinks of me. That's the most important person in my life is my son. And I don't care. It's not that I don't care, but I value his opinion. That's my boy.
Right.
On Easter on Easter Sunday, and this was I ended up spewing a drink all over my table. He had messaged me, and I hit the message, and he said, "Happy Easter or Zombie Jesus Day." That's my, and he's an attorney too.
That is awesome.
Oh,
That
that's my
is
boy.
awesome.
That is him, and and I tell everybody, without Jack, I would have had a good boy.
Mhm.
With Jack, my son is a great man. Jack Jack loved him like his own child. And he loved Jack like Jack was his dad. It wasn't like he was his dad. Jack was his dad. And I am so blessed. Once again, I needed it when it happened. Like I said, my whole life people have been put in a place for me when I needed them. And I needed Jack,
Right.
with John, because I was overcompensating with my son because his biological father, well, to be very blunt, his biological father was a crackhead.
Mm.
And he got on crack after I married him,
Right.
not before. And his bio dad, he he would tell him he was coming to pick him up on a weekend, and he'd not show. I mean, no phone call, no show.
Right.
Then he'd call him about Wednesday the next week. Well, I'll pick you up on Friday night at such and such a time. And John would be sitting on the back porch waiting on him, and he wouldn't show. And finally, one day, I hollered at him because his dad had called. He was on the phone. And I hollered at him. I said, "Your dad's on the phone. Tell him I'll call him back." And then he told me, he said, "I don't want anything else to do with my dad."
Right.
And I said, "Well, do you want me to be the bitch and say that, it's me?" He says, "No, Mom, he needs to know it's me."
Right.
My son, my that is my greatest treasure. That is, I mean, not only is he funny, he's smart, and I've got pictures of him and Jack. Uh, One of them, John's probably 10 years old, and Jack and him are sitting on top of the picnic table blowing bubbles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like I said, I'm my life. No, I don't live in a mansion. I don't have $1 million in the bank, but my life has been worth it, every bit of it. I
Right.
the I'm blessed to have the two men in my life that I had. My son John and my husband Jack.
I am blessed to have been able to interview you. I cannot tell you how much I've enjoyed this interview. You are such an inspiration um, to so many. Thank you so much for being my guest. Again, Tell people, when can they expect to possibly get this second book that's coming out?
The new book, Fighting the Wrong Side of the Sun, becoming Princess Victoria. Tom Stratus is the author. It will be available for the first time at the Gathering in Charlotte, North Carolina at the Hilton. I believe it's on College Drive. And I will be there. That is the first place you're going to be able to get them. After that, I will let everybody know who's selling it. So they can either get it from me and get it autographed, or they can buy it without an autograph. But I recommend, if you buy the book, and then, I still get, I still get money off the book.
Right.
But if you buy the book, send it to me, have to send me a self-addressed stamped envelope. It's going to be more than what I'm sending it to you. Right. And you get it autographed. So.
Right. Perfect.
Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have had a wonderful time.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're an excellent interviewer. Like I said, when you have asked me questions that I have not heard yet, and that always, you have made me think, and I like that.
Thank you. That means the world to me. It really does. Guys, buy this book. I'm telling you, if you think this interview was great, I can only imagine how much better the book is going to even be. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Again, Princess Victoria, thank you so very much. I appreciate it. Everybody, have a great week. Have a great week, Princess Victoria.
Thank you. Hey, you have a great life. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed myself.
Good night.
Good night, dear.